So today the TEK that we're going to be using is 26B, develop a topic sentence, summarize findings, and use evidence to support your conclusion. We'll be using that TEK to talk about food chains in science. So we're going to build a mind map thing to write our paper for the topic of food chains in science. So misconceptions students may think that dead is the same as non-living rather than understanding that a dead organism was once living. And another misconception is students may think that the plants do not use the food that they make. So today, to help us build our paper, this is going to be the graphic organizer that we use. We're going to split our paper up into 3 parts. So the first part is going to be your introduction, and we'll label it with an I. The second part is going to be the conclusion, and we'll label this with a C. That's your third part, and then your second part is the body, and we'll label that with a B. Okay. So in order to start our introduction, we're going to have our subject, and your equal sign is going to be the transition word into your definition. Okay. So the subject that we're on today is food chains. Okay. So now when we think of food chains, okay, so a food chain is a series of organisms, each dependent on the next as a source of food. So that is going to be our definition. So food chains, and we'll use is. We're going to circle it and underline our subject. Food chains, a series of organisms each dependent on the next as a source of food. Okay, and this is just to help you think of an introduction. So no, it's not grammatically correct, but this is just to help get you started. So you know that in your introduction, you're going to have what you're talking about, which is your subject, the food chain, and what the definition of it. That is how you're going to introduce it into your paper. Okay, so now we're going to build us a graphic organizer, okay? And this is the food chain, okay? And within the food chain, we'll talk about the different parts of the food chain and what the different parts of the food chain mean. So we'll think of definitions, okay? So when we first start with the food chain, we have the sun, right? And then we're going to move to producers. Okay, and then from producers, we move to primary consumers. And from primary consumers, we move to secondary consumers. And from secondary consumers, we'll move to decomposers. And you can see in our little organizer here how one, like the sun leads to producers, producers leads to primary consumer, to the secondary consumer, to the decomposers. You can see how they're all related. So the sun, of course, is how they're going to get the energy, how the producers are going to get the energy to, you know, for their food to grow in order to feed the primary consumers. Producers are going to be your plants, algae, all those different things that feed the primary producers. So we'll draw like a little plant here. Just, you don't have to be like a artist or anything, just something to help you visualize that's a plant, just like we drew the sun for the sun. Then the primary producers are going to be, or primary consumers, they're going to be herbivores, which only eat the plants here, and carnivores. Okay, so when I think of them, I think of like little rabbits. And like I said, you don't have to be an artist. Just draw you a picture to remember what primary consumers are. Then you have the secondary consumers, which are going to be your carnivores and your omnivores. Okay. And then you're going to have your decomposers, which are your funguses and bacteria. So I'm drawing a mushroom to help me think about the decomposers. So you have bacteria, and fungi, or fungus. Okay, and so from here we can talk about, okay, so we need the sun. Okay, so the sun is going to help the producers produce. It's going to help your plants. Okay, and so the producers are going to help keep your primary consumers alive. This is what they are going to eat. Okay, so this is the food. So the sun, it helps make the food for the producers. The producers are the food for the primary consumers. The primary consumers are the food for the secondary consumers. And then the secondary consumers are, you know, the food for the decomposers. So after they die, the bacteria and fungus come and decompose them. Okay? So for a second, discuss that in your groups. Okay, so now your conclusion is going to be, again, your subject, what you've been talking about, how you're going to transition, and a different definition. Okay, so food chain. Food chains, we'll use is again. The process of how different organisms eat. Okay. So again, this is not a great, like, you're not going to base your conclusion off of just this. You're going to base your conclusion just off the sentence, but it's not going to be, you know, exactly how you would say it. Okay. So when I look at this, I would start my paper. A food chain is a series of organisms, each dependent on the next, as a source of food. Okay. And then from here, I would take and I would say the first step in the food chain is the sun. And the sun helps provide energy for the producers to grow. The producers are a food source for our primary consumers. And our primary consumers are a food source for the secondary consumers. And then our decomposers eat what the secondary consumers leave behind, okay? So take So y'all, we have this, we've done our graphic organizer together. Now take what we have learned here and write your paper. And when you're done writing your paper, we're going to start a whisper circle. And you're going to whisper each part into your paper, into your partner's ear. And then at the last, when we come to the last person, they're going to have to say it, you know, to make sure that the sentence was passed around correctly.